Hang on, no, watch
It's different.
It's very different.
Wait a minute,
It's very different.
No, not subliminal messages. He's a grown man.
Yeah.
Call him into a room, have a conversation, see if you want to get paid up, we'll pay you up, we'll help you find a new club.
It saddens me that it's taken death to do that, but also it's the reality of opportunity for many, many people.
Hello, welcome back to Whisper It Loudly. It's a full house once again. I am here alongside Troy Townsend, Jordan Jarrett-Bryan. I, of course, am Hugh Woozencroft. And with us, looking sultry as ever, is Darren Lewis. The first weekend of Premier League football is under our belt. So we've got several talking points for you today. And today's episode sees the return of current affairs, cultural talk, coming a little bit later. It'll all be focused, of course, on that incredible summer in a negative way regarding the riots that took place across the country. But we'll start with the football, and we start with Chelsea. And we have to start with Chelsea because it's turning into a joke. Troy was quite strident about Chelsea last week. There's been more developments aside from their game this weekend where they were beaten by Manchester City. They got players coming in, the shape of João Felix. Looks like Conor Gallagher's going to be on his way out. And you've got people like Jamie Carragher saying Chelsea just need to stop signing players. They just need to stop now because it's getting ridiculous. On top of it, Raheem Sterling, who wasn't in the matchday squad, went out, put a statement out saying how basically good he's been, come back to training 2 weeks early, felt like he had a good relationship with the manager, felt like he was going to be involved. And then you had Enzo Maresca, the manager, saying not all the players are going to be happy, not all the players are going to be involved. He likes Sterling, but not everyone can play. And that has led to some conjecture over his future as well. So where do we pick up Darren Lewis with Chelsea right now?
Well, the weird thing about Chelsea is that actually they played okay on Sunday. They were just beaten by the better team. And I think amidst everything that's happening, sometimes it's easy to forget the football, but they played well. And there is somewhere beneath all of that, the rubble of what you've just discussed, is a football team. But there's so much around it that is going to undermine that team, their ambitions, their targets, their progress. And most of it is centred around their transfer policy. And quite apart from why do they keep buying players, it's why do players keep signing for Chelsea? If you want to play football, why would you go to Chelsea where you have, what is it, 43 players that they got on their books, 6 goalkeepers, I think 6 number 10s. They've just bought another winger for a position where there are already 3 players. That winger had been at Chelsea before João Felix. He didn't exactly pull up any trees. So it's really curious to understand why these players, if they want to play football, keep signing for Chelsea. Until that happens, it's really hard to understand what they're trying to do.
Well, there's 2 edges to that, though, isn't there? There's the player side. Why sign for Chelsea? There's the club side. Why are you signing these players?
But the club can approach those players. But the players can say, no, you've got too many players already. Thank you very much. I'll look elsewhere. But they're still going. And that's the key question. You can stick it on Chelsea, absolutely. And all of us have said before that the transfer policy there makes 0 sense. It seems to be geared towards bringing players in young, selling them for huge profits and taking a resale value rather than any idea that they want to be ambitious, because they were going in the right direction at the back end of last season. They'd won their last 5 games in a row under Pochettino. I think only Arsenal and City had taken more points at home in the second half of the season. And yet they fired him, brought in a rookie at this level. And even though he's a terrific coach, Maresca, at this level, he's unproven as the main man. And they said to him, what we want from you is to show signs that we're going in the right direction. Well, Pochettino showed those signs. So, and he's saying, well, I've got no pressure on me. Well, clearly there can't be any pressure on him because it's a mess.
I think Darren asked the pertinent question here. Everyone's asking why are Chelsea signing players? I think it is why are players going there? The obvious answer, I guess, would be, well, if you're a player and you can secure the next 10 years of your future financially, then, secure the bag, as the young ones will say. But I also think to myself, if you're a player, it doesn't look fun. Like, even just put the money to one side for a second. If Chelsea are in for you, there's a high chance that another top club will be looking at you and would take you, right? But it just doesn't look fun. If I'm a player, if I'm João Felix, money aside, are they going to win anything this season? Am I going to get minutes? Does it feel like a team that's on the cusp of doing something quite fun and creative and going somewhere? I just think, why would you want to... Okay, living in West London is not the worst place in the world to live, but I just think on that perspective, like, it just... If Arsenal coming for you, you're excited. I think even United, at least with the backroom changes, there's the optics at least of we're moving in a different direction. We're trying to become a serious club again. Whether that manifests or not, we'll see. You know, Spurs, there's Ange is a character. There's I'm playing for him. What is the pull for Chelsea apart from the money and living in West London? So, I that's my question for the players. It's what is the pull to go to Chelsea other than a big bag of money for the next 10 years?
There's another thing to add to it as well. This isn't the first time we've seen clubs stockpile players. We've seen it with Chelsea before, and lots of players leave to seek their footballing fortunes elsewhere and actually do quite well. We've seen it with Real Madrid and lots of players. I remember Wesley Sneijder, the wonderful attacking midfielder Wesley Sneijder, couldn't get a game at Real Madrid, went to Inter Milan and won the treble under Jose Mourinho. Good players not getting a game, going elsewhere and realising, actually, I am still a good enough player to be able to do well, and it isn't really Chelsea, any given club's a gift within their gift to basically determine what my future is. We saw it with AC Milan in the 90s. We've seen it with Manchester City early when they took over and they were just buying players left, right and centre before it all settled down. And the fact that Chelsea aspire to be like Arsenal and City is laughable because both those clubs have settled squad, a very defined transfer strategy, a clear set of achievable ambitions because the culture within the club lends itself to that. The idea that Chelsea can in any way aspire to what Chelsea and City are doing is just mad.
Just before Troy comes in, just briefly as well, my thinking was always, I think as most people, what Chelsea are doing is a model to make money off of the players they're signing now, sign them in, sell them on 3-4 years, hope to make a profit. But the Cole Palmer extension to his contract makes me think, what is the benefit of extending the contract? He was already on a 6-7 year contract. Yeah. So I don't even understand as a club what the model they're doing is now. Like, is this to make money in 5 years' time? And if so, why would you? If Cole Palmer rips it up again this summer, he'll want more money next year.
Absolutely,
he will.
Genuinely, I go between Chelsea are trying to inflate the value of the club as a whole by having all of these players, so that in 2 or 3 years, when they try and do a quick sale, they can say we got these young players who are, hopefully if they improve, who are worth X amount of money. We've got so many of them, then that means that the club is worth an extra, I don't know, £500 million, for example, £1 billion maybe, I don't know. But you start to think, is that what they want to do? Get all these players to be worth 100 million, and then suddenly they try and sell the club because they are venture capitalists ultimately. Is that what they're trying to do? There are times when I think they're trying to create the old loan system that worked really well for Chelsea when they made loads of money, and so they've just got a stable of really young players who they want to ship out every year and earn some money that way. I keep thinking it's the multi-club model where they're going to own clubs in various places. They're using Chelsea as the vehicle of bringing them into their multi-club system, and they're going to farm them out. And then there's part of me that sometimes verges to just they're trying to run the club into the ground so that they can sell Stamford Bridge and earn the money on the real estate of Chelsea Football Club and sell the training ground as well. Like, there are times where I'm literally like, do they want this club to stay in business? That's how crazy it seems from the outside. And actually, I can't decide. None of it seems to be aimed at being successful on the pitch, which is I think the most difficult thing for Chelsea fans to take. Troy, I think we got your views on Chelsea as a whole last week.
You did, yeah. I'm going to stay on that theme, but I'm going to bring Raheem Sterling. You mentioned him in your opening there, and listen, anyone can be left out of an 18-man squad, particularly when you've got 102 players. Of course you can.
103 now.
But 103. But there's my question is, I'm questioning who's running this football club, who's running the squad. So for me, the ownership is running the football club, running the squad. We've seen players and the mistreatment of players, and add Chilwell and Sterling to what I said last week. I'm really intrigued, particularly the views of everybody, is why there was a statement made from Sterling's camp, why it was made at a particular time that it was. For me, it was done to cause chaos. For me, it was done so that everyone knew that this football club is not being run like football clubs are normally run. And I think it was a massive statement from them to say, we want to get out of this, what they perceive to be a hellhole, because he's come back early. He's done what he's had to do. Look, coming back early is nothing new. You know, doing 2 weeks of extra training is nothing new. So why that was even mentioned, I don't know. But there was a particular almost dig at the management and the running of the football club, which I think went over some people's head, because it was a statement, just after 2:00.
People had become aware in the middle of last week that the club were prepared to listen to offers for Sterling. And I'm choosing my words very carefully here because I'm aware of some of the background behind what had happened. But I think given his service to the club, given their excitement around his arrival, listen, it would be fair to say that he's had a mixed couple of years since he signed.
It hasn't worked.
But has he conducted himself negatively? No. Has he gone out and done any interviews or anything like that, attacking the club? No. Has he done anything other than be a professional in terms of the way that he's conducted himself? Yes. And so the idea that he's acting badly or he's trying to do something that runs counter to what the club is doing is not true. And the other thing is this, and I think we all agree with this, I've long been of the opinion, and we've all worked in football a long time, everyone watching us watch a lot of football. Football treats footballers the way it wants to. You know, it pushes them around, it tells them what they should and shouldn't be saying and doing and whatnot. And as soon as footballers speak up for themselves, everybody comes down on them.
I think you've taken my words wrong. I'm not having a go at them. I'm presenting the situation the way that I saw it. You've presented the situation the way that you know it. I'm not having a go at players. I said last week that the way that the players are treated, they have every right to do what's right for them in this industry. Because this industry, when it's ready to make them go and train with the under-21s, belittle them in some way, it's ready. It's going to do it. And it's done it with a number of homegrown talented players at this football club now, and that for me is sending out a really strong and powerful message to those players. Like, you're not worthy. You're not, whatever you've done at this club, it's not worthy enough to represent Chelsea Football Club. Now, it has also come out that, the signing of players at Sterling's time that he signed was under a real bad structure, almost as if like we made so many bad decisions about the players that we were signing back then when he first joined. And I'm thinking to myself, so what are you doing now? What is the structure behind everything now? So listen, I'm always for the player. I don't like.
Sorry.
That was loud.
Just briefly, I think we're being a bit kind to Raheem Sterling here.
Yeah.
I think we're being a bit kind to him. I think Darren's right in as far as he's conducted himself, I think, professionally since he's been there. This wasn't cool. What was he actually saying in the statement? The statement was basically saying,
it was not a statement. It was a response.
Okay.
It was a response to a series of questions that has been framed as a statement.
Either way, the response is
on that point that you made. You know how it works. You can ask for guidance from a player's camp, and they'll tell you whether they want it reported or not. They can say, "Listen, off the record, everything's cool."
But they can't tell me when to put it out.
No, but listen, if they say to you, "Off the record, everything's cool," you're going to say, "From what I know, Raheem Sterling has no issues with Chelsea. They have no issues with him." Right? If his camp tells you that, there's details here that are unnecessary unless you want it reported. Look at the way that it's written. It's very formally written. He returned to England 2 weeks early to conduct individual training, has had a positive preseason under the new coach, who he has developed a good working relationship with. He is committed as ever to delivering the highest level for Chelsea FC and the fans. That's a statement, Darren.
That's not
a journalist saying what's going on and asking questions.
Hold on. Detail. If you said to me that he had a meeting and you divulged the contents of that meeting, that's detail. That's hardly going to set the world alight. He came back from training and he's basically done his job. That's
my point is, you're saying it's not a statement at all. My response to that is, even if they were asked the question, they've responded with what seems to very much be a statement.
Well, not really. If you put together what the answers were, then you could call
But
it
even
a
if they
statement.
wrote this, the fact that it has gone out exactly as they've written it suggests that they were happy for it to be reported.
You're making a lot of leaps there.
So you think a journalist just took this as a response, off the record response?
I'm not ascribing. I think you're trying to kind of nail down things and I'm not pushing or saying specifics. I'm just saying that my understanding is that it wasn't a statement released at 2 p.m. an hour, or what was it, 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Well, 3 p.m. before the game. That's my understanding of it. And, you know, we're spending, look at us, we're spending 3-4 minutes talking about Sterling. Whereas when the treatment of Sterling, as Troy was saying, is no different to the treatment of Conor Gallagher, of Trevor Chalobah, of Ben Chilwell, of
It is
all
different.
those players.
Hang on, no,
within
watch
that
this,
squad.
it's very different.
Wait a minute,
It's very different.
When I say it's no different, in that those guys are all turning up, they're all training, they don't have the profile of Raheem Sterling, but the fact is, as we've all been saying, they're now being moved out after doing very little wrong. The thing that gets me about Sterling, actually, and I will say, you know, there seems to be this move to sort of nail him in a way when actually I remember players giving interviews on golf courses saying, I want out of the club. I remember players not training up for training at other clubs to force moves and not getting half the stick that Sterling seems to be getting.
Do you know what I'd rate him more
this
for? When he did
situation.
a similar thing when he was at Liverpool, he did the interview with the BBC, I think it was, that wasn't sanctioned. He got battered for that. I backed him because I'm of the mindset of, if you want to move employer, do what you got to do. Now, the heat's going to come your way, but if you can take that, cool. I totally backed him on that one. I'd respect him more if he just came out and said, I want out. Can we make it? I want out.
But he doesn't want out. That's the point. He doesn't. Listen, last week it came from the club. He'd had all of his pre-season. He'd been, as I say, doing his job basically. Let's not suggest it's anything other than his job. But suddenly it'd be like you going into Channel 4 News one day and someone saying, "Yeah, Jordan, we want you out." And you go, "Well, where's that come from? You haven't asked to leave. You haven't asked. You haven't done anything."
Just so we're clear, if they said that to you, you're like, "Cool, I'm bouncing. Where's my payout?"
I love Channel 4 News, by the way. Just my boss is listening.
Nothing to do with his relationship, by the way, with Channel 4 News. Just he knows when he's not wanted. Okay.
Yeah, no, I just listen. I just think that this thing is heading people off in roads that they shouldn't be going down, because he has not asked to leave. He does not want to leave. He wants to stay and fulfill his contract. He wants to stay with the club, but they want to sell him
Here's the thing.
in the same way that they want to sell Conor Gallagher, who wants to. Listen, I sat opposite a table from Conor Gallagher in America when he said, after playing for Crystal Palace and doing really well, so well in fact, that they wanted him back for the following season. He's helped them to the FA Cup final. He said, I want to play for the club. My family are Chelsea supporters. I want to play for this club. That means nothing to the people who run Chelsea right now. They see pure profit from him. He's come from the academy. They're going to be able to bank that. So they're moving players
I think
around.
it's different.
But we
I think
are
it's
trying to characterise Sterling as negative, and I just think that's so wrong.
Yeah, but Darren, listen, there's nuance to everything. So the idea that you either did everything right or everything wrong is not the case. We're not saying that Sterling is at fault here, but all we're saying is, and my point is to you saying that he wants to stay. Well, if you want to stay and you've been left out of the match day squad, it's the first game of the season, don't say anything.
Yeah, but he didn't. This is the point.
You didn't say anything now.
No. You are responding to what you think was his response to being left out of the match day squad. And I'm telling you, those words are a response to an approach to the club that had been made way before that. Those words are a response. And I'm telling you now, that's the problem with this whole situation. It is being framed, his words,
as if it
a
came
response
after
to him learning that he would not be in the matchday squad. And that's not true.
So why didn't it come out earlier, do you think?
Well, it's not. It isn't. His representatives give the words, and then, I'm a journalist. I use them when I see fit.
Whilst I'm not challenging that, there's one line in there that says about he expected to be included in the 18 this weekend. Mm-hmm. So just in response to what you said there, this was not in response to him being dropped. It kind of framed, and again, I'm using your term, it's framed like it is, because it says he expected to play some part this weekend. Mm-hmm. So how did that all come about then in regards to being in that statement or collection of responses?
The words, the framing, I can't speak to any of that.
But that gives the impression that it was after his him not being in the squad. But
listen, I'm a journalist. I'm never going to be against journalists doing their jobs, and I would defend every journalist's right to be able to do that job.
Really?
And so the fault isn't with the journalists. They've done a terrific job, and in getting into a story that clearly is there to be told.
Well, look, we'll see in the
But
next
I think
2 weeks.
that actually, for me, right the way through, this is on the toes of the club. If you want a player, if you feel that you want to move on from a player, do the decent thing. You're saying you'd have more respect for Sterling. I'd have more respect for the club if they called him in and said, listen, we're going to go in a different direction. We're going to help you find a new club.
If you sign 3 players in the position, they kind of are saying, we don't want to
not subliminal messages. He's a grown man.
Yeah.
Call him into a room, have a conversation, see if you want to get paid up, we'll pay you up, we'll help you find a new club. I'd have much more respect for the club.
Everyone should be offering 30 million today.
But everyone thinks they're better than the player that they're going to bring in. If you've been established, you think you're what? Nah, I'm going to prove that whoever they bring in, them men are going to be sitting on bench. So I understand that point of view. I'm very keen as to why you're not really supportive of him as an individual and this kind of message, Jordan. Though.
No. I'm. What I'm saying is that I'm reading between the lines of what was said, and Darren has given a bit of context as to it not being a statement per se. So I'm learning more about it as in real time here.
Okay.
My initial thought before Darren said what he'd said was this was a statement, and I'm reading between the lines. I'm just seeing a guy here that didn't need to do that and has disrupted. I mean, I heard Gary Neville make an interesting point yesterday, I think on TV, where he said, "Forget the club and the manager. Your teammates, it's your first game of the season at home to the champions. They don't need that sort of heat. Maybe they don't care. You know more than me. Maybe players or something don't really care about that. But I just thought, really, an hour before. But Darren,
all I would say is that being left out
Sterling,
on the first game of the season as an established pro, that hurts. It hurt. You work hard. You're ready. You're like, you know what I mean, first day of the season, Premier League.
But doesn't every pro at Chelsea now have to kind of expect that? There's so many players, apart
regardless
from Palmer,
of whether
is anybody guaranteed to start at the moment at Chelsea?
Regardless of whether they expect it or not, there's also an expectation on their own ability. As far as the chaos that is going on is concerned, there'll be players there that have been left out that will, I'm sure Ben Chilwell probably doesn't understand what's going on. Conor Gallagher is going to sign this week for Atletico Madrid. As Darren states, his heart is still at Chelsea. He's now going to have to learn to release that. There's players there that would actually be thinking, I cannot believe I'm not in this starting squad. And they may have done things privately. They may have gone off and knocked on doors privately. They're not knocking on Maresca's door. They're knocking on the owner's door. It's as simple as that, because I don't think the manager is running the club in the way that people say he is. And I think a lot of his words and his statements and messages from him are being typed for him to try and articulate in a way that sounds like the manager's in control.
I think the only thing that he has done where we're getting the message over what is going to happen once the transfer window has ended is that he's basically saying, look, everyone can't play. And he's going to choose his team over the coming weeks, who he thinks should be staying at the club. In the meantime, I think he knows it. Any player could be bought. Any player could be sold. That almost has nothing to do with him. So he's here like, I'm a head coach. I take the players out on the grass. I train them. I'm trying to be respectful. He's not dropping people to the under-21s. The club is.
Oh, yeah, I agree with
He's
that.
not saying, I want you to go and train with the kids. The club's saying, we want this player out, so they're going to be training with the kids, whether you want them in the team or not.
Disrespectful.
So he's in that situation right now. That's why I said last week, I think he could have been a successful manager for Chelsea without all of this going on. With it going on, he's got absolutely no chance, in my opinion. That doesn't mean they're going to have a bad season, but he won't be there for over one season, in my opinion. The point is, and I think we need to just quickly move on, is whether Raheem Sterling stays at Chelsea now, whether he should actually be actively looking for a move, where we think he should be going. By the way, I think everyone at Chelsea should be looking for a move. I'll be clear. Like, unless you signed in the last window, in this window or in January,
even then,
like, your agent, even then, your agent needs to be.
Well, actually, I'll change my mind.
Your agent needs to be having a little ear out there. Like Enzo Fernandez's agent, his boy starts every single week, but he's not good enough for Chelsea. Still, he's not playing well enough. You telling me you're not going to have a little word at like Barca? You fancy a little Enzo, or give us a little 50 mil, 60 mil, 70 mil, see what Chelsea... Like, it's a mess right now.
The Sterling situation, listen, when he was leaving Man City, he was hot property. And I felt he made the wrong decision in coming to Chelsea.
Agreed.
The thing now is that he's not as hot a property as what he was before. And so that limits where he can go.
Where's the market for Sterling now?
The price that they put on him may also limit where he can go. So it's not as easy as it would have been when obviously he was flying, because he's had a difficult period at Chelsea.
Can I just say, I can't believe that Sterling is not like one of the first names on the team sheet for Maresca, having worked with Guardiola for so long and been so successful with Guardiola, Sterling. The idea that you're coming, and I know it's not the exact same style of football, but it's largely based on this blueprint from Guardiola. You wouldn't think, I can just slot this guy in straight away and not really concern myself too much with whether he's going to be able to get the tactics. Experienced, still physically capable. It's kind of mad to me. And again, maybe it's a message that the club just want Sterling to leave. It's got to be Arteta and Arsenal. If they can do a little 30 mil, 35 mil,
so?
you wouldn't put him in there on the left-hand side.
No, I'm saying Arsenal are going to take him. You think?
No, I'm saying the best fit for right now, where he's actually, I think, got a good chance of playing, would be Arsenal. And I know Arsenal fans would take him. You take him. Arsenal fans are a bit weird. Like, they'll take Rashford. They'll take Rashford. They'll take Toney. They'll take anybody.
If Arsenal signed him, I wouldn't be like,
Do you know the amount of groaning I'm hearing from
there's a lot of groaning over
today. Yeah, really.
Honestly.
I'm trying to bite my tongue.
I think we should move on. We've done Sterling.
I hope Sterling finds a bit of a home now, because his career's getting on.
Would you take him or not?
I thought we were moving on, but
No.
the fact that he still hasn't responded yet,
It's a no.
I don't think I would, no.
and I don't think many Arsenal fans would now. That's the way I see it. I mean, love him, provide great experience to any squad, knows how to finish. Chelsea fans might say, yeah, but ultimately his street cred in the Prem now has gone down because of his years at Chelsea, and I don't see Arsenal, who probably, I think you're right, probably the only club, but I don't see them taking him.
Okay, all right, let's move on to another player who could be on the move. We spoke about him last week, Ivan Toney. The rumours are that he'll be on his way to Saudi Arabia, the Brentford striker.
I love the way you look at me.
Didn't see this coming. And I just wonder why there isn't another club in the Premier League not signing him, not at the front of that queue right now. I know it's big money to go to Saudi Arabia, but I still think Ivan Toney has good years at an even higher level than he's playing now if he can reach the Champions League in front of him. I find that move to be an odd one. But again, financially, you can't blame a player for taking care of their family. If he goes to Saudi Arabia, is he going to destroy his England career? Go on, Darren. Go on, Darren. Defend it.
Excuse me. At the moment, it's very early. It's only a rumour, so it's hard to suddenly start doing 2 or 3 minutes on what he's going to do in Saudi and what the repercussions are. I think that at the moment, they're just one, as I understand it, of a few clubs that are interested in him, and I think it's wrong to suggest that they are his only option.
Okay.
Has he got one more year left in his contract?
It's 1 more year. So
why wouldn't he see it out?
well, that's what I would do if I were in his position. If the club that came up in for me didn't suit me, I would stay, I'd play my football, and I would score the goals, and I would ensure that I dictated the calibre of club that came in for me. Brentford have made a lot of mistakes around this, and I think one of them is not accepting what were huge amounts of money for him over the past 18 months or so. They demanded a huge fee. Now it's come back to bite them because the clubs are saying, we like him, but not at that price. Not with a year left on his contract. It's totally unrealistic.
You made a point about he should take control of what he does in his last year. I agree with that. But I also think for Brentford, I think it's within their interest to keep him 1 more year as well. They might lose out on 50 million if it goes on a free.
Why would it?
But if they go down,
why would it be in their interest?
Because the goals that he can score and keep them in the league, that will be more beneficial in the long run.
Last season, they stayed in the league. They've got a rotation of 3 They have to play different, but they've got a rotation of 3 very, very good forwards at the moment, as proved on Sunday. They might be a little bit injury prone. They've signed a new player that's been injured, but I think they're very comfortable that if Ivan Toney does not play for that club again, that they have the tools to keep them up. And I'm not sure why I'm saying that. Tools to stay relevant in the Premier League.
I think they go down for what it's worth regardless. But
have you seen some of the teams in the league?
I have. But I just think they're going to give themselves a much better chance of staying up. Obviously, with him staying 1 more year than letting him go in this window.
Let's be clear. The reason I asked this question is because of the Saudi Arabia links.
football we haven't spoken about.
Which we haven't really spoken about. I don't want to see him go to Saudi Arabia now. I think he's got a chance. I know Harry Kane's a fantastic player of being heavily involved for England in the coming years. I think he's proven that he can handle international football. So I want to see him in an England shirt. I don't hate Ivan Toney, by the way. I'd love it if he came to Manchester United. But the point is, I think the Saudi Arabia links is why I asked the question this week. You know, money's one thing, but I think really now he's got a chance of making a real dent on English football, even bigger dent on English football. He's got to stay.
28 or 29 now? Is he 29?
29?
He's 27.
27.
Oh,
Is he?
I thought it was 28 going on.
Don't worry, I've got Google.
All right.
Keep going.
27. Again, another year for me, and he's in control of his own destiny. I think it's so close now to that year, that contract. Do you know what I mean? That he's then in control of it, and he becomes more of a suitor to those clubs that would not have spent what Brentford are asking
100%.
for. More of a suitor, and it's a
Turns
no-brainer.
29 in March.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah,
28.
Yeah, but it becomes more of a suitor if that year runs down.
I totally agree. I think the way he looks after himself,
Physical
his attitude
specimen,
is fantastic. And I think people have made the misconception saying that clubs are not interested. They've not been interested at the price that Brentford want for him. But given that, if I were in those clubs' positions, I would do exactly the same thing. I'm not coming in, then I'm waiting until the last couple of weeks of the window, and then I'm making an offer that they have to listen to. Otherwise, they're going to lose him for nothing.
Yeah.
And the idea that you could lose a player that good for nothing is horrific business sense.
My only point would be in terms of a club making a move now is that there are some teams in the league, I'm thinking of United and Arsenal, that arguably need a striker now.
Yeah.
Arsenal
Jordan,
needs...
every time you mention Arsenal need a striker, it makes me like, No. About you know that.
You said a 25 season.
How do you know he wouldn't get that?
No, he might, but you're bringing up a discussion we've had that's
because I don't
separate to
like
this.
you anymore.
I'm just saying, if United, for me, need a striker now. Arsenal need someone that can score goals now. So waiting a year for those...
I didn't say that. I'm saying that there's 2 weeks of the window to go, and it's perfectly feasible that both of those clubs, even Chelsea, if they can't do Osimhen, could come in for him and say, here's, I don't know, £15 million, take it or leave it.
What we have to say is that any club that gets him is going to be an advantage to that club.
Yeah,
any
absolutely.
club that gets him.
You laughed when I said to Brentford, but if £15 million to Brentford on the last week of the window is better than zero, if the window closes.
No, I'd keep him.
15's way too low.
15's nothing.
Yeah, you might as well keep him.
If he gets you 8 to 10 goals in the league,
fair, that Brentford
that could
board
keep
is
you up.
very, very
Brentford can
shrewd.
score goals without
I do
Ivan
believe
Toney.
that, but the Brentford board is also very shrewd to not accept a 15 mil bid.
No.
Even
15
if
mil,
there's
half the
a
league's
year
in
to
for
go.
him for 15 mil.
Well, yeah, but he's not going to half the league because
No,
he
but
wants to
I'm
go
talking
to a club that is playing
but
European.
listen,
half the clubs in
So you're
Europe
talking
will
about
offer
5, 6
£15 million
clubs.
for him.
Yeah, of course they would, and
Yeah.
that's the whole point.
He's
and
not
then
even
it's
on,
up
like,
to him to
200 grand
decide.
a week.
But the point is that his contract has run down to such a level that clubs can take liberties like that
We shall see.
because they haven't tied him to a longer
We
term
shall
deal.
see. By the way, a team like Inter Milan, for me, it should be in for someone like Ivan Toney. They love a player. Inzaghi loves a player who can help lead the line. They don't care about age in Italy anyway. He could play another 7 or 8 years there. Massive football club.
Napoli.
Yeah. I mean,
So let's see
the cards are in
what
his
happens.
favour. He could, one way or another, he will, by this time next year, be playing Champions League football because the cards are in his favour.
Right, okay. Up next, as the football done, we'll be talking about... Didn't really give much love to Tony and Sterling, but we do love you.
I gave love to Tony.
Yeah.
You hating on
We
him.
love you.
You
I'm just
hating
balancing
on
the
him.
podcast,
You hate-
guys.
No, he's
I'm just
giving us some
balancing.
love.
By the way, expect an exclusive interview. Darren Lewis, Raheem Sterling coming up very, very soon. Anyway, up next, we'll be on to our much missed, but it's returning, current affairs and culture section. That's straight after this. Well, we had a little bit of a break over the summer. Obviously, we like to talk about current affairs. It kind of came at a difficult time because so much was going on, but equally it has given us all some time to reflect on the summer that was when it comes to the Southport attacks, and our condolences go to the families and communities affected by that. But of course, the fallout from it and the riots that occurred, the arrests, the sentences that have been handed out most recently, all up until this morning. And so It gives us plenty and plenty to talk about, which is why the question, I think, will be quite wide and quite vague. My question is, what are the riots in particular in the summer, in the wake of the Southport attacks, tell us about where the United Kingdom is today? It's a very wide-ranging, you could call it vague question, but I wanted to try and encompass as much as possible.
I'll go first. I think the riots told us much of what I think us as black people already knew was there, an underlying bubbling sense of anger and resentment and nastiness to people who are depicted in large parts of the media, and I will mention that I am part of the media, as the enemy, as the bad guy. And there was a sense for me with those attacks that, in fact, more than a sense, that there was a group or large parts of the country were just waiting for any little excuse to bruck out and bruck wild. And you had a lot of these racists, and I will call them racists, who used the opportunity of a tragedy of the loss of 3 young girls to try to conflate an incident and a tragedy with an agenda. That agenda being those others are the reason this country is going to the dogs. We lost these young girls because this country has too many of those other people in here, which is an extension of I can't get an appointment at my doctor's centre because too many immigrants. I can't get my kids into school because too many immigrants. I can't get on the bus because it's too packed. Immigrants. And I think that what we saw and what we've learned is that these people now are shameless in their cause to try and change the country back to what they remember it to be 20, 30 years ago.
I think it's also, though, important to make a distinction between those people who do have an ideology and are out there purposely trying to get others, if you like, radicalised to the far right, and those people who actually felt like they feel like they live in a world where everything that you just said as almost being a fiction of their imagination is the reality because of the influences of national news, Facebook, X, social media. There were people out there that were almost, especially being met with a negative reaction, were like, hold on a minute, I thought we all lived in this world. I think it is important that we actually say that there are many different factors that play a part. Not everyone out there who went out of their houses felt like they were racist, felt like they were a far right or a nationalist even person, because many people are living in a bubble where views like you just said are the everyday. We live in a bubble, they might claim, where views like that aren't everyday, and we're living in a London bubble and we live in a cloud. But I actually think there are particular people in the media, particular people on social media who actually, I just think they need to be given a special place in terms of the responsibility they had in inciting others to go out there. I think there's a group that were incited, and there were a group that were inciting others to go out there. And I think they are a distinct group. Many of the ones inciting, it's a profitable thing for them. They're making money off inciting others to hate minority groups. Even some of those people don't believe what they're saying, but it's a business model for them. And I actually think those people need to be highlighted in a unique way.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true to say that there are some people and some areas of our ecosystem where hate sells, to put it very bluntly. And the people who are affected by that aren't just the people who are the recipients of that hate and that violence, but also the people who are being used to inflict that violence, because those people, they need opportunities and investments. There are parts of the country, I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody, of course, but the politicians have let the previous government let everybody down. Everybody. There are areas of the country that have been razed to the ground. There are areas of the country where there are opportunities that are being taken away from people. And the politicians took those opportunities away and then told those same people that the fault of it is those people that they demonize. If you look at the statistics for the people who come into this country, most of them come for work, for study. They work in the health service. They work in all sorts of areas that are beneficial to this country. A very small number of those people come in illegally. What the politicians did is they cut off all the legal routes. So by default, if you came into this country and you weren't able to take any of those legal routes, you were illegal. And so, and then there was this narrative built around why these illegal immigrants to this country are negative to this country. One of the things I heard somebody say was that he'd been set upon by 3 migrants, yeah, and they gave him a triple heart bypass and saved his life. You know, and it was the idea being a lot of the people who have come to this country did as they have always done, as our parents have always done, contributed hugely to helping this country, building the infrastructure, working within the services that are beneficial to a lot of people. The politicians have just tried and succeeded in dividing people, frightening people, worrying people into believing that people who don't look like them are the enemy. But I still retain a faith that we are surrounded by good people, you know, and we know that if you pump enough fear and anxiety and negativity and anger and frustration into any group of people, you can have an impact on the way that they see the world. And unfortunately, that's what's happened.
Is that because you're in London? Sorry, Troy, I'll keep jumping in before you have your say. Is that though because you're in London? And what I mean by that is because you're in a city where there is huge diversity. And we saw in Walthamstow where when hate is rumoured to be coming to your door, we saw what happened. But if you live in a small town, a small village, a small city where diversity isn't prevalent, does the black Darren Lewis in that town have hope, have faith that actually, you know, good will overcome?
It did, yeah. I mean, yes, it did. I do, because in those parts of the country on the same night as Walthamstow, there were still large numbers of people who came out to say "not in my name." Mm-hmm. There were large people who came out, even on the nights when the negativity and the violence, let's not call it what it was, and the racism and all that stuff was breaking out. There were some people coming out to try and support and stand up to be counted. And also, as I said before, in these areas where there is not a lot of diversity, a lot of those areas, again, are areas that have been let down by the politicians. And the politicians with no solutions to those problems point the finger at the migrants, at the people who don't look like the indigenous population of those areas, and say they're the problem, not us.
I find this conversation difficult, and the reason I find it difficult is the reason why the race riot started, or potentially started, although I think we were on the cusp of things starting anyway, and it just needed an excuse. 3 children lost their lives in Southport, you know, and I'm a father who has lost a child, and how far that conversation has gone from those 3 children, what their parents and close family must be feeling, you know, the people around them in such horrible, horrible circumstances. I struggle to talk about anything else, and I know we have to. I get it, I understand it, but, you know, I'd love to send love, support, and whatever else it is to those families first and foremost, because it's, in whatever way, it's an horrendous situation, you know, and young people with everything ahead of them, I find that really, really difficult. We're living in a period of time where what has happened was always going to happen. It was just what was going to ignite it. And it saddens me that it's taken death to do that, but also it's the reality of opportunity for many, many people. And they are still a minority. And I pick up on Darren's point where he says that I still have faith and hope, because we have to, because we have children, we have grandchildren, we have family members who are part of the system that we're trying to grow and actually battle against a lot of what has happened. And we have to continue to provide hope, because if we don't, then what are our children growing up into? Yeah. What are our grandchildren growing up into? Yeah. Listen, the government, I work in football, football has always ignored. It had an opportunity to stop this a long time ago, or at least to challenge it, very, very much so. And it failed. It failed because it didn't want the far right to grow. But underneath their noses, the far right was always going to grow. It's just no one wanted to take responsibility for challenging it. And it's grown in a way where actually we look at it now and quite rightly, people from all different backgrounds are now fighting back. They're trying to take ownership. They're trying to show their levels of support and you know, that this country is a country where we can all excel. And then there was the challenge, obviously, of black and brown groups, Muslim groups fighting back, you know, and that became the top end of the story as well, didn't it? And I remember seeing a video of a guy, he's part of the Football Lads Alliance, quite obviously without him saying it, but him saying, lads, we've got to get back out on the streets. We've got to get together again. You know, there was 76,000 of us marching in 2017. You know, we've got to bring the band back together to stop, you know, people like us four living. So to challenge who we are, to challenge the fact, I'm very proud to say I was born in Hackney. Very proud to say I was born in Hackney, grown up in Walthamstow, Chinkford, and have now moved. Oh, I shouldn't really give my thing away because I'll start thinking. But
Mayfair,
you know. But do you know what I mean? It's like, who are you to tell me to go back home? Because then I'm putting a key in a door in Wells Street. So, you know, they cannot look at us and think that we're not part of everything that is good about Britain. You know, my parents came over and my mum was in the NHS. When Britain was nothing, like, black and brown people helped rebuild it. Where's our thanks for that? Thanks for keeping, you know, Great Britain, this country of ours. Thanks for keeping it and bringing it back together again. But people like the ones that we're talking about would never give us props for that, would never.
For me, I think it was a lot of things that you're talking about there, because you're just highlighting that we've had a lack of education around the impact of immigrant communities in the UK. So we have a lot of people in the United Kingdom who don't actually know the impact of, might be the Windrush generation, might be Sikh and Indian soldiers during the war. I think Islamophobia just generally, people maybe don't have a real, truly deep understanding of, because so much Islamophobia has been allowed to exist in the public conversation for so long that immediately when rampant Islamophobia came out after the attack, you know, it wasn't being called out in the way that it should have been by just everyday normal people. I think it was almost like it felt believable when it was totally false, inaccurate, fake news, whatever you want to call it, and it led to so much more. But when because we've had so much previous Islamophobia that maybe people didn't.
And when there's people at the top of the food chain who are also driving, despite being from those communities, their own Islamic views, negative opinions, it helps others who are not in that faith, not, you know, cannot touch that. It helps others fuel their own opinion. Well, if X can say it, if Y can say it, it means that all of you are the same. Mm-hmm. And that's why we've allowed people, we've voted for people.
We didn't.
When I say we, I say we a lot, and I'm really wrong, so I'm glad you've corrected. But there's a lot of people that would have voted for those people to be in power and have power and change the narrative of the conversation to their narrative.
But it's actually an interesting point that you raise voting, because we had the messages and the support that UKIP garnered in previous elections, Reform UK now and the amount of support that they've had. And instead of those communities that were probably misinformed around immigration, I think lots of those people were, if you go and ask them around their views on immigration, strong views on immigration, largely either just slightly misinformed or just totally wrong. You know, you think about the fact that people are illegal, and that phrase that was used by so many politicians, when in fact you can come here legally in a boat over the channel. That is legal to claim asylum in that fashion. Why, people ask? Well, because largely refugees are fleeing war zones. So people aren't going to tell them to book a flight or a Eurostar or anything like that to get away from their imminent danger. And so we've always had that in terms of our conventions. But even so, you feel like you listen to some people who don't necessarily understand that. But I think just generally speaking, those votes, UKIP, Reform, have always been seen by the major parties of what can we do to appease them? How do we get those votes back with us? We had a referendum, which was pretty much based on the Tory party trying to appease that group of people. And there was never, I think, a concerted effort by the people outside of that group, outside of those opinions, to actually just re-educate and say, you can vote for whoever you want, but let's just make sure you're understanding the exact issues and the exact reasons why things are happening. Instead, they were used as a way of winning elections. So no one tried to change their opinion. It was just, how do we appease those opinions? And actually, I think 10 years later, where people should be much more enlightened around immigration, it's brilliant that people have strong views on something that affects the country so much, but let's have people truly understand it. Our issue is so many people don't understand it. They're easily radicalized because you can pick up on the one or two little views that people go, oh yeah, that must be right. And if that's right, then everything must be right. Same way that the kind of social media misinformation, all of the people that we can think of, the likes of Andrew Tate, they might say one thing that appeals to people, and then suddenly everything they say is right. You know, there are obviously clear techniques that are used. People are trained in this, and that's why it affects people so much. But ultimately, I find it almost staggering. I think the riots almost showed us that you know, there are people, there's like a spectrum of opinions, but based on different bits of information.
Yeah,
that's a crazy thing for me in a country like ours where people should be educated enough to know at least the facts and then base their opinions on fact rather than conjecture or opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the success of the previous Tory government was that they were able to influence the people who don't read the detail. Soundbite culture, get Brexit done. All of that kind of thing played very well for Stop the Boats as well. I mean, it was on the lectern of the Prime Minister, of the Prime Ministerial lectern. It was on Question Time. It was on so many of these shows that it just got burned into the public consciousness. And then suddenly when you see the footage of people committing racist violence, you hear them saying stuff like Stop the Boats. And it's quite interesting you use that word radicalization, because in some respects what we had over the past 14 years was a far-right government grooming disenfranchised and disillusioned communities to hate, to feel that the subject of their hate should be people who just earning an honest living, helping to build the country, helping the economy. And then you had more mainstream politicians buying into that as well, because it wasn't just on the Tory party side. Jonathan Ashworth on the Labour Party side talking about the Bangladeshis who contribute a huge amount to the British economy, and Keir Starmer as well at one stage using that language as well, which was concerning. So there is a lot that went into, and you know, let's not kid ourselves about. Everyone played a role in it. The fact
well,
that
I was going to ask you, just generally, we're all in the media-ish. You know, how much the media played a part they played generally on everything that we've been talking about. You know, I spoke about social media, for example. I spoke about some of the individuals, but we've got mainstream news platforming some of these people regularly. Disproportionately.
Well,
We've
Nigel
also got
Farage
newspapers.
is one of the highest appearance makers on Question Time in the show's history. And for much of that time, he was not an elected MP. And I think, and I've said publicly before...
None of it. None of that time was he an elected MP, was he?
He was an MEP.
Well, I don't know if he
MEP,
has been an MP. I don't know if he's been on since he's been an MP. I don't know. So that's why I'm just being a little bit careful with that. But I think in general terms, we've had this diet, and I've written before about the fact that I've been sick of waking up to daily diets of immigration and how people should be almost groomed how that people have been almost groomed to fear and to be anxious about people who come to this country that don't mean any harm, just want to live their lives safe and to contribute to the economy and to work in the health service and to study and to do all the things that British people go to other countries and do. But that previous government, previous Tory government, elements of whom were black, were brown, but were really keen to demonise people who looked just like them, stood back in horror and said, oh my goodness, how terrible these riots are, and it's got to stop, when they are the ones who stoked it.
I think I'll just, sorry to interject, I do think the legislation around media reporting needs to tighten up now, including punishments, because we've just seen so much on social media, and I think that's an area where the likes of Ofcom need to be stronger. But we've seen from social media to television to newspapers over the last 20 years, we've got a strong culture of journalism playing a part in democracy in this country, but ultimately misrepresentations, let's call it that, playing a major part in terms of how the public think. Ultimately, a lot of our long-established, world-famous media outlets, were built their reputations on being, newspapers of record and purporting to only tell facts. We've gone heavily in the age of social media into opinion on front pages, headlines.
Yeah, but I want to be careful with that, because I don't want to lean into the idea that we cannot have a freedom of the press. The freedom of the press is so important, and I think you can have opinion within that freedom of the press.
Let's be clear. I'm not saying let's stifle opinion, full stop. What I'm saying is, much in the same way as we as public members would be hit by the force of the law if we incite people to violence, if we demonise. We've seen new legislation apparently on extreme misogyny coming up this week. People have incited extreme Islamophobia through their mainstream outlets. They're not punished because they work for a mainstream outlet. You walk in the street and say that, a policeman's probably going to put a pair of handcuffs on you. I feel like we do need to be stronger. This is not about an opinion being out there. This is about essentially writing hatred about particular groups. I think we've let what we almost seem to be acceptable, I think the line's moved very, very far in this country, not in a good direction. What freedom of speech and all those arguments that are made largely are people saying, let me say something that is incredibly offensive or horrible about a particular group of people and let there be no repercussions from it. I just don't find that acceptable. We've seen a number of investigations by Ofcom into certain broadcasters who clearly broke the established rules. Minimal punishment, if anything at all. I think they need to be stronger, and that's me talking about making sure that there is a free and independent press, because ultimately what allowing people to get away with things does is completely destroy the idea of any trust in our news and any trust in our journalism. That is bad for for democracy. That makes what we consider to be respectable outlets, makes them like any old Joe who's bought a verified tick on social media purporting to be someone who is actually telling you the truth when they're not. We need to have that clear distinction.
And there's been the likes of GB News, I'll name them, who've had that dance with Ofcom and various. No, I know you didn't, but I will, because what I'm saying is factual. They have had their scrutiny from Ofcom on a number of occasions, and one of their biggest presenters or ex-presenters, Nigel Farage, you mentioned earlier on, is somebody that I think is a game changer in the sense that he's been able to say what he's wanted to say for the past decade. The difference now is he's in Parliament. Do you know what I mean? And that for me is very dangerous. Go on.
Well, final word on it is the news that Nigel Farage has come out. They've had to declare MPs their earnings. He's apparently the highest earning MP now. He's made almost £1.2 million a year from GB News. This comes up in the first register of interests for the new Parliament. The Reform UK MP declared he was earning £97,900 a month from GB News, which is a channel co-owned by the hedge fund billionaire Paul Marshall. Farage also revealed his visit to the US in July in the aftermath of that assassination attempt on Donald Trump cost £32,000. That was funded by Christopher Harborne, a Thailand-based crypto investor who previously gave millions to the Brexit Party. The purpose recorded as a support of a friend who was almost killed and to represent Clacton on the world stage. Almost £10,000 for a trip to the National Conservatism Convention in Brussels. funded by George Cottrell, an official aide to Farage, who spent 8 months in an American jail in 2017 after being convicted of offering money laundering services on the dark web. Just for balance, the new register of interest also saw that Keir Starmer was gifted 4 tickets and hospitality to a Taylor Swift concert by the Football Association. Mate, that was worth £4,000. £4,000. Let's just be clear
Football
on this.
Association.
Wembley Stadium must be their box.
Yeah.
Prime Minister also had previously raised eyebrows. He'd been picked up £76,000 worth of freebies in hospitality while he was in opposition. This is before he became MP. Just to let you know kind of sums, Geoffrey Cox, the Tory MP, also works as a barrister. He was previously the highest earning MP, making around £400,000 for working for his law firm.
I think.
Honestly, I mean, you've got a liking for Taylor Swift. Did you get free tickets?
You went to Swift?
Oh,
You were
yeah.
Swiftie? You were Swiftie?
Can we come back to that? No. You're right, Troy, to bring that up. Let's come back to that. Yeah, we have to come back to that for sure. I think ultimately, going back to Farage and the amount of money that he's earned from working at GB News, I think the people that matter the most here are his constituents in Clapton. I think if they voted him in, if they are happy for him to be in America when they have needs locally and swanning off and doing what he's doing with Donald Trump, then they voted him in. Don't vote him in and then complain that he's not here to do the job that you voted him to do.
But going to the US is one thing. I think receiving £1.2 million from a broadcaster in this country definitely skews it. Let's put it this way. If I was the Prime Minister, if I had the power, I wouldn't have second jobs for any MP other than those people who work in health services. We know that we've got some doctors who are MPs. They want to do time in a GP or they want to do A&E shifts. I think fantastic. We need them, but also it's hard to be compromised, albeit some might say, well, they're going to be very pro NHS because they receive money from them. But generally speaking, if it was an oil company, he was getting £1.2 million a year for, you wouldn't want him debating the energy policy or environmental policy. If he was receiving £1.2 million from, I don't know, a transport company, you wouldn't want him deciding who gets contracts or helping to vote on that. Like, broadcasting, I think, is even worse because what it suggests is, and I'm not going to, I'll imply it, but I'm not saying that this is the case, is, GB News in particular, that's a huge loss-making enterprise. Mm-hmm. Why are the owners of GB News prepared to lose so much money? That you've got to ask yourself that question. And why are they prepared to give certain people so much money to appear when clearly we all work in media? We understand that he doesn't need to be receiving that. Mm-hmm. That's entertainment money. That is Saturday night entertainment money. Mm-hmm. Millions and millions of viewers, which we know GB News doesn't have, doesn't make that kind of money in advertising revenue. So in that regard, it does, I think, you end up asking questions of an MP, a sitting MP, doesn't matter if it's Nigel Farage or anyone. You don't want to undermine the independence of the MPs who've been voted in. I don't think that we should be doing that. Agree. So again, this is not about Nigel Farage. For me, it's any MP. I would have, firstly, every meeting with an outside company has to be recorded. I want to hear the public should have access to every conversation that's made with an outside company who, there are many of them lobbying, saying that things should go in their way. It might be government contracts, whatever. We should have access to those conversations. And secondly, I don't feel like you should be paid by one of these companies. And there should also be a time limit after you leave office in terms of receiving money from companies.
That's a lot here.
But that's the reality of what we're dealing with. By the way, I would also pay MPs much more.
The reality is, why are we questioning it? We know it happens. We know it goes on. We know why people are paying him, in particular, that amount of money because of how much influence he has, because of the people, his supporters, his troops and whatever else, and the messages that they send. It's there. It's in broad daylight. It's been going on forever and a day. We're highlighting it now, but we should have been highlighting it whenever it was that we knew that MPs were first, getting money, subsidiaries in a particular way. It's a fact of life, and what we're doing is we're just highlighting a fact of life. I'm not saying it's right, by the way. I'm not a supporter of it, but sometimes we have to hit reality in its face. It's what happens. That's me personally.
I agree. With what you've just said, I don't disagree with any of those points. But Troy's also right. It happens. But I think it goes back to who we vote in to run the country, and the person that can control this is the Prime Minister and the current government of the day. Whether they move on it or not, we'll have to wait and see.
Just on that point, if you'd like to control what we say, we're available right now. 1.2 million a year. I'll take it.
We'll take that.
I'm joking.
We'll
I'm
take less
joking.
than
Although,
that,
if you
for
do
sure.
want to sponsor the podcast, get in touch. Final point, Darren Lewis. How good was Taylor Swift? How long have you been a Swiftie?
You've changed, man.
You can't even look at me. If you're posting it on your socials, you can't look at me. You have a massive amount of following.
I thought you were a music man.
I didn't post anything on my show.
You
so.
did.
No, I didn't.
No, you got the close friends only.
I got the
You just exposed him. It's the green ring, man. Come on.
Why am I in that ring? What's
There's no green ring. There's no green ring.
how was it?
It was all right. I have to say, I didn't. It was business. I can't go too much into it, but it wasn't a Taylor Swift. I'm not a Taylor Swift fan. It was
It's
business.
okay if you are.
No, I'm not.
It's okay, man.
No, I'm
She's
not.
like one of the most famous artists.
Probably the
Oh,
most
listen,
famous
yeah.
pop
You've
song.
got- you've got
She does have a
children.
nice tune, Lavender Haze.
Oh,
Very nice
wow.
tune.
Lavender Haze.
Wow.
Yeah, I
You've been listening in the car, yeah?
So
Did
I
you dance?
listened to
Did you
it.
dance?
I put it on the
Did you
Spotify.
dance?
I didn't dance.
You sung though, innit? With your chest as well, innit?
Taylor Swift.
It was
every
business. It was not. I'm not a Swiftie. I'm not a fan. It was business.
What, freebies from the FA?
No,
Not the FA, not the FA. It's that last topic. I think we could have gone into even more, and maybe things will happen. Sentencing, two-tier policing. We might return to that because that's another big conversation that's come out of what's happened over the last few weeks. But we've run out of time, so appreciate you joining us. Make sure you subscribe, you like, you share, and we'll be back again next week. See you then.